Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.
That's right. Welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. My name's Dave Momper. I'm your host. This is a fatherhood podcast for new dads and soon-to-be dads. I'm a new dad myself, and I'm asking every day, great dads, what does it take? What does it truly take to take on the ultimate role? All right, let's get to it. Welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. Here we are with Austin Liberato. Cannot wait to chop it up with you, Austin. What did you do to start off your morning? How did the morning go for you?
Oh man, good question. Well, Dave, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Excited for this. What did I do to start my morning? Well, Beck and I always have breakfast together. That's kind of our thing. So I make them eggs. So I had breakfast this morning, eggs, and then got started on my day, handing them off to our weekly nanny. She comes in a couple times a day or a couple times a week, and then hopped on this with you. And now here we are.
No food fights, nothing dramatic yet?
No, in the morning he's super hungry, so he eats everything. Lunchtime, that's a different story. Not quite the same. There's definitely much more to clean up after lunch.
Breakfast is just like insatiable, like every
Oh,
little crumb.
I call him the machine. The dude eats. Yeah, he loves to eat.
So let's give our listeners a little bit of context about how we know each other. Austin and I were roommates in 2016.
Yeah, allegedly.
We
hardly ever saw each other.
It was like a stage in both of our lives where we were just coming and going, but we lived in the same house.
Yeah, we were both pretty nomadic, totally different life than now.
Yeah, it is a neat contrast to think about maybe our disposition, our perspective on things, our agenda, our priorities when we first met. I mean, how would you describe where your mind was at relative to being a dad today? Where was your mind at in 2016?
I don't think it could be any different. 2016, I had just come back from backpacking in Southeast Asia for a year by myself. I knew when I came back to the States, I wanted to move to Colorado. And I found a room through a buddy of mine, and you happened to be the other roommate in there. I was at that time like independent, nomadic, no ties to anything. Compared to now, wife, kids, house, all that kind of stuff. They're both really great in their own way, both of those sides of my life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking, and you picked Colorado. What was it about Colorado? You were coming back from a beautiful place. You grew up in Texas. Why Colorado?
I knew you lived here. I was coming out here to ski all the time in the wintertime, and I had season passes for several years. And then one year I came up during the summertime. It was like 100 something in Texas. And I came up in the summer to Breckenridge, and it was like in the 70s. I was like, holy crap, man, this is amazing. This is so nice. And at that time I was already thinking about backpacking and all that stuff. And so I was like, okay, when I get done with backpacking through Southeast Asia, I was like, I need to make it to Colorado somehow. I need to make it to Denver. I have a couple friends, that kind of stuff. And at the time, single, no ties, like I said earlier, I had freedom to be able to figure things out. I lived like a vagrant and a vagabond for that first year, especially trying to find a job and all this other stuff and navigate new town and everything.
Yeah. And I feel like there's been a shift over the last few decades. Like a lot of people jumped right into fatherhood in previous generations.
Yeah.
But I think the way that you wandered around and became, you fired up your adventurous spirits. That's one of the things I want to explore with you a bit is adventure as a core theme of this whole podcast.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I don't even know we don't need to answer it, but how is that going to serve you over the course of being a great dad? I think it's going to serve you well. I'll just say that. rhetorically, but do you have a sense, like, what was it about that walkabout that's going to actually be a key tool or insight?
Yeah, I think that what it's helped me realize and applying this towards my kids, is raising them with an open mind to cultures, to um, to traveling, to just every aspect of their life. I don't want them to necessarily, I don't want them to spend their entire life in Denver. I want them to get out of here and go experience something. If they want to come back, then come back. I want to push that sense of adventure for them because I had it in me growing up. Like, I grew up in a small town in South Texas, 3 hours from the border of Mexico, called Corpus Christi. And growing up there, it was a very small town. Um, the culture seems like just like normal culture now to me, I get, or like whenever I was a kid, because that's just what the culture was. But I got to travel a lot because my mom worked for the airlines, and so we used to take passes and go like all over the U.S. and that kind of stuff. And I got to see that stuff, and that sparked an adventure in me. And I hope that my kids have that same sense of adventure. And if they don't, and I think we'll probably get into this later, like great, whatever they want, whatever they want to do, like I just want to foster that in them, whatever they're passionate about.
About
Yeah.
my sense of the human spirit, I mean, being adventurous is what it is to be a human. So that you're number one and you're soon to be number two are in good fortune. I
Yeah.
feel like you're gonna extract that spirit out of them or reveal it to them.
Yeah.
But I know what you're alluding to, which was the prompt I served up. So let me just read the prompt to those listening. I'd asked Austin, what does it mean to be a legendary father? And the goal of this podcast for the listeners is to really showcase leadership, to showcase adventure, and to showcase raising a legend. And that has a lot of interpretations. So it's a fatherhood podcast with those three themes in mind. And I had asked, what does it mean to be a legendary father? And here's what Austin says: I don't think it takes much to be a legendary father. Be present, foster their curiosity, and be there to catch them when they fall so that you can help them get back up. All that matters to me is to be a legendary father in my children's eyes. I don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
What do you mean about the last part?
I don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
I don't care how, like, obviously I'm gonna raise my kids to the best of my ability. And there's probably people that don't agree with certain parts. And by no means the way that I raise my kid is like a controversial way in any means. But my goal with them is focusing on them,
Let's see.
on him. And whether Beck, wants to get into mountain biking like me, because I love mountain biking, great. If he wants to get into choir, good. I'm not into choir, but you know what? Like, I want him to be the best choir student. And I mean student by like, you're always a student of something in your life. You're always studying, as long as he's extremely passionate. And then just talking about like how everyone can be, what I say in there, something about like, it's not hard to be legendary. I think that sometimes people put too much pressure on themselves to being a dad, and that especially maybe before your dad, it seems like a daunting task. But as mammals and as humans, like, this is like what our purpose in life is to carry on the genes and continue human life. And to be a legendary dad, you don't have to do a lot. It's just be there for them. And that's what I want to be all the time for my kids.
I
Always
like
there for them.
I like that you said it's I've been saying the ultimate role. I was think about all the roles that we as men get to serve, and literally I'm like thinking about, you've had corporate roles, you in terms of career roles, you're also
Mhm.
a brother, you're a
Mhm.
son, you're a
Mhm.
friend of mine, um, you're a great husband to him, and yet isn't this the ultimate role? Like taking something that is this little human who's almost helpless to a degree, and they're like just guiding them, not forcing it, but guiding them to a point where they can what I suppose. What is the ultimate? What is
Yeah.
the duty, by the way? What do you think? What is our role? It's the ultimate role, but it's on behalf of getting this kid to a certain point. What are the characteristics or the attributes of that to say that, we succeeded as fathers? What would you say?
I ask myself that question all the time, man, especially after becoming a dad. It's tough. What is the goal? I think it's, you know, you can't control your child, and I don't want to. I want to guide him toward what he's passionate about. And we could get into the whole thing. I've done this before. Do I want him to be, would you rather your child be happy or content?
Hmm.
And I want my son to be content, because happiness is fleeting,
Okay.
but you can sustain contentness. We can get into, I had a whole, this past Christmas, a whole like fun debate with a big group of people about happiness versus contentment. Um,
Give me the distinction between those two. Contentment,
content,
happiness. Happiness is
well, so my definition of happy is like, it's part of it is that it's fleeting. You cannot stay happy, but you can stay content.
yes.
I don't, we can, yeah, but we're kind of,
Is there something about contentment can be a constant state of being,
yeah,
but in order to do that, you might need to deploy like gratitude and
yeah.
composure and I don't know. Is there anything else in there? Like, how do we achieve contentment?
Contentment, in my mind, is being satisfied with where you're at and what you have and who you have. But also in that, it's not like there's just contentment. There's, you always want to be striving for more. And in my mind, happiness, when you're happy, it's a fleeting thing. You can't sustain happiness. You can sustain contentment.
Yep.
So with with that, I'm just going into, talking about Beck and my other unborn daughter who's, having in a few months. My goal is to foster that contentment in him, and have him always asking those questions about why this, why that, because that curiosity, I think, is what drives and, you know, allows and builds satisfaction. Um, you know, I'm most happy when I'm working on a house project or something, or learning something. I love learning stuff. It's that asking that why, and I get satisfaction out of that. And I think that Beck would as well. And kids do as well. They're right now, they're that sponge. They're just constantly learning and absorbing. And
Mm.
now I'm seeing him like mimic me. So Beck is 16 and a half months old, and he's starting to mimic me. And it's real basic right now. But like the other day, I like was clearing my throat, and he was sitting on my lap, and he started clearing his. And so I kept doing it, and he kept doing it. And it's just like, they just absorb everything you do. It's so funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in the ultimate role, the duty we have as fathers is potentially to generate an outcome that consists of some contentment,
Yeah.
curiosity, like the ability to
Foster it.
concept, yeah, to deploy inquiry and be curious
Mm-hmm.
by design.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for me, one of them is self-reliance.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a duty we have, a worthy duty to aspire to, right? Like, because I'm not going to be around forever,
Yeah.
and I want the kiddo early on to appreciate being self-reliant. But I think, I mean, I still lean on my parents for things, I suppose, but I'm self-reliant at this point in my life. Um, but I definitely would not want to leave them the opposite of that. dependent on a bunch of things, the system, people. Do you feel like self-reliance is in the mix?
Yeah. How do you foster self-reliance? Like,
Ooh,
and I'm asking you because I have some ideas of it, but like, how do you foster like self-reliance? And
I think self-reliance is almost more of a mindset than it is a skill set, although it requires certain skills. Like, to maybe if you were to get really literal, um, food, water, shelter, can you acquire those things as a human if you needed to? And
Mhm.
yeah, can you build a fire? That's self-reliant in a way in terms of a skill set.
Yeah.
But I do think it is the mindset. I think it's like having an attitude. You might have heard of the growth mindset
Hmm.
versus the fixed mindset. And a woman named Carol Dweck has a book called Mindset. It talks about these two different uh, attitudes we can deploy. So I feel like, yeah, I want someone to be self-reliant. I want Leonidas to grow up to be self-reliant. And it's mostly, I'm going to teach him some great skills over the course of his life, but without the mindset to deploy those skills and to be resourceful and to think about challenges and adversity as like almost part of it's part of the game of life. And in fact, bring it on with that with that in mind, bring on the challenges, because I want to prove to myself or learn things. I want to prove to myself that I can solve puzzles in life or solve problems, and that anything
Hmm.
that you throw at me, I can navigate or address. And through it, I get to learn. It's a learning opportunity. So that curiosity and self-reliance almost combined is tied to growth mindset somewhere in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that because it's even in my answer in a way saying that, be there to let them fall,
Yeah.
that self-reliance to fall, but be there also to pick them up when they need it. Like, let them fall and they will pick themselves up. But if they can't, if that comes crying to me, of course I'm going to pick them up, hold
Sure.
them, be like, buddy, let's try that again. Or, hey, come here. What went wrong there? That kind of thing. Yeah, that's a good one.
I like what you
Self-reliance.
just said there. How are you learning to guide him currently? Because his trials and tribulations as a 16 and a half month old, which is he's a year, 4 months, and 2 weeks, right? So
Very good, Dave. Very
yeah.
good.
So I mean, the trials and tribulations, what are they? What have you
Yeah.
seen him faced with? And then
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about how you're guiding him in those moments.
Oh man. I mean, these days he's navigating. I think his biggest thing right now is navigating new places and people. He he's now, as of last week, going to daycare outside the house. So twice a week we have a nanny, and twice a week he goes to, this was before, this is, end of 2023, let's say. Twice a week he had a nanny. Twice a week he was going to my parents-in-laws who live just a few minutes down the street. And then once a week, and then one of those days I would take care of him like on a Monday. Because as a photographer, my job's flexible, and then weekdays are definitely like really flexible. Weekends are usually less. But now he is going to daycare twice a week, Monday and Friday. Oh, sorry, Wednesday and Friday. And him getting used to strangers is his biggest thing right now. I think like that he's battling his big stranger danger, and that's tough. And I'd be curious to see what like other people who are listening like do to help with that, because it's like what do you do?
Mhm.
We try to warm him up, all kinds of things. So yeah, that right now is his biggest thing. And then anytime he goes somewhere new, he's very quiet, very hesitant. Like I was telling you before we started, we went to Dave and Buster's last night with some kids. All our friends' kids are all like 3-ish or so, and he's the youngest. And he, for an hour, just wanted me to hold him. So I held him. And then we walked around Dave and Buster's. So I was trying to get him out of his shell, and I tried setting him down, and he still wanted me to hold him. He crawled back onto me. And but by the end of it, like we were there for like 2 hours or 2.5 hours. He was just running around like a madman, just like loving it. So he came out of his shell. but getting used to new environments and new people is the toughest thing, and trying to help him with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. I don't exactly know what to do,
Mm.
but
Sounds like you're kind of just meeting him wherever he's at with the whole thing, right? You're not gonna force him to go play,
no,
but
no,
you're meeting him right where he needs you. He just where he's at is where you're at.
yeah.
And so are you reading that, or I don't know, how are you noticing? Is it your intuition? Is it certain signs of his, or what's your?
I mean, it's you get to know your kid, and sometimes he fakes it, sometimes he fakes a cry, and I'm just like, Baba, I know you're faking it right now just because you want attention, but I know that he has a harder time with being out in social areas and that kind of stuff. And he's like me, he's a little bit quieter. His mom is, way more outgoing than I am. Um, and so I just kind of play off of his energy on there. I know that he is just he takes things in. When he gets somewhere, he takes it all in. He like susses everything out, kind of, figures things out, and he wants me there. So I'm there for him. I'm not going to be tough love and just say, figure it out, buddy, and just like set him down and walk away from, or like, let him continue to just pull on me, because he'll just pull. He'll try to climb me, you know? And no, I'll hold him and we'll go walk around. And so then I'm trying to get him like, okay, check out this space, like look around. Like, then I got him on one of the games with me, that one where you ride the motorcycle, and you're like doing all the jumps and all that stuff. So I put him right in between right in front of me. And then we were racing through there and that kind of stuff. He did that a few times. And then by the end, man, he found a car game, because he loves sitting in the front seat of my car and playing with everything. So he found a car game, was just sitting there at the steering wheel for 20, 30 minutes. We didn't have to put any money in for it. He was just having a great time.
Yeah. And you're taking like a million pictures of him at this point?
Oh yeah, for sure. For
Right.
sure. Yeah.
So I was wondering about, you've got another one coming, right? So
Yeah.
420, is that the birth date?
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Somewhere around there?
418, but we talk about 420 just because it's easier to
I
remember.
feel like 420 was in our conversation last, but sometime around there, who knows, give or take, right?
Yeah.
What have you learned from your experience with Beck and number one that you're going to do differently with number two? And I don't mean because she's a girl, but more because like, you've done it now, right? So for like the new dads listening, what adjustments do you guys make to either getting ready for that pregnancy, or
Yeah.
the birth, or how you've maybe set up your home life or your schedules? Like what's the iteration with this second round?
I'll say the part that we're looking at, we think is going to be the toughest, is having two babies on two different schedules. I'm sure there's dads listening that have two kids, three kids, four, however many. They're like, oh, that's nothing. But you taking the steps. Your first kid, I think, is probably, I would think your toughest, because it's just a complete lifestyle change. It was for me.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe number two is even more difficult. But I would say for us, for Emily and I, the one thing I think we're going to change this time around is we want, and we're fortunate enough to be in this situation where we want a night nurse for like the first 2 months or so. And that's maybe once or twice a week, we'll see. The toughest part for us by far with Beck for our first few months was sleep, lack of sleep.
Yep.
And when you're getting 6 hours or less, and it's not consistent, it's 6 hours that are broken up because she's gonna have to feed. And I helped in that process, like Beck he liked the bottle. So we separated it out. We took turns. That was the toughest part, was the lack of sleep by far for us. I mean, we've never been at each other's throats more, like just because we were just so exhausted. And we were talking and we said this time, like, even if it's once, twice a week, somebody just take over for the night just to
Yeah.
watch him. But who knows? Maybe she'll be a dream and super easy. Back for the first 2 months wasn't. He was up every 2 hours to feed. He was always hungry. It's so funny, and I'm sure I don't know if you're like this, and maybe you're still like kind of still in the beginnings and everything, but I and everybody says it, I don't remember a lot of the first 2 months. I just remember thinking, holy crap, we're not getting sleep. But Emily and I were talking the other day, we've forgotten a lot of it. And I feel like that's like a natural like instinct of human, maybe like that you're meant to forget how tough those first few weeks are. And you guys had it really tough, you
Yeah.
know, but with your little one. So yeah, I nightmares for us. But then I think the question is like, yeah, same back for you. Like what would you guys change in like, how tough was that first few months?
Man, I'll touch on it for sure. What I heard in there though is almost yes, it's hard, and yes, maybe by design we're supposed to forget about it, but it's tolerable, it's bearable. Like you
For
can, for
sure.
anyone listening, it's definitely, it was different for me and Mac in a dramatic way, but
Yeah.
but then also um, any change where you're infusing this new factor into your life that is um, of that magnitude, right? Where is that's going to disrupt your flow, your patterns. I feel like my takeaway so far has almost been, and I'm not, I'm just thinking about this as I say it, feeling almost silly that I'm making this claim because I haven't mastered it, but being intentional with your schedule or with the time you use. Because
Hmm.
now it's just there's one extra life, of course, and any free time should be used um, productively, which could be like give yourself some rest, right?
Hmm.
Right, or give or let your wife rest. But it's funny how the experience of time and all the different tasks of running a household or managing a household with your partner, um, you have to be more organized,
Hmm.
or it's helpful to be more organized. Like, um, but yeah, I suppose the first 2 weeks for us, right? 11 days in the NICU, and it's amazing. I've told the story of Leonidas' birth so many times now, and it's almost fun to tell because he lived.
Yeah.
It would be traumatic, and I can't even imagine if the story ended differently than it did. That
Yeah.
story it wouldn't be possible for me to tell it. Um, but and the short of it, and for those listening, 11 days in the NICU, the first literally the first 20 to 40 minutes of his life, definitely the first literal 90 seconds of him, 2 minutes of him, 5 minutes of him, I thought he was a goner, right? Lying there, breathless and lifeless, um, at a birth center with the right people there to save him, and in between Mac's legs on the floor in a pile of amniotic fluid and blood, like not responding to my touches. That was nuts.
Yeah.
And yet he, I think in that moment we didn't have, like, say, the technical skills to save him. Although if we were the only ones there, I guess we would have jumped into fight or flight mode in a different way and
Hmm.
done, I guess, whatever we thought we could. But fortunately, we had two people there who knew technically how to tend to the babe and give him some respiratory assistance, 911 being called early on,
Hmm.
and showing up within, what was it, 10, 12, 13 minutes of him being born, and then getting
Hmm.
rushed to the ER in an ambulance. The first time I've ever been in an ambulance with my in my life is with my son in the back, and he fortunately he started coming about. And looking back on it, when he
Hmm.
was in the ambulance, uh, I was able to take a couple breaths because they were like, he's breathing back here, he's crying, right?
Yeah.
And then the team at Children's Hospital, all of a sudden I had all the resources I possibly need, and is the good fortune of the modern world we live in. We joke that if it was the Oregon Trail goner, you
Yeah.
know, crazy. So I suppose the takeaway from that, and I'm gonna have to do an episode on the depths of that experience. But the takeaway from that was almost you can definitely you want to go in with a plan as a dad and say either the captain or the co-captain of the ship. You're like, I got this. We're ready with like snacks and delivery bag and like the car seat, everything, and whatever role you're going to play for your wife or your partner in the pregnancy, like you've kind of sorted that out. But this, we didn't plan for this. We didn't even map it out and say, well, how would we handle it? Where are the resources?
Yeah.
We didn't even think it could go that way, right? Which is almost it's a worthy thing. Like, I guess something can go wrong. So who are the resources, or where are the technical people, either in another hospital system or um, so that you can just think through, like, all right, are we good? It's probably not going to happen, but if are we in the right place? Or we do have close proximity to, you know, the technical help we're going to need if something went really wrong. We didn't ask ourselves that. Fortunately,
Yeah.
we were in the city, right? Everything was good. But what I did find myself tapping into was almost, it was just like an instinct of, well, what is in my control? And what was in our control in the moment, right when he came out and he wasn't responsive, was our voices
Hmm.
and our touch. So we were showering him with love through those two means, right? Telling him about his life, and Mackenzie declared his name in the moment, and which we were kind of going to wait on until we really met him, and so
He
she
was a
spoke
Leonidas.
Leo out, and declared it to the world, declared it to him, and then, gosh, from there, you know, I remember I called my parents as we were going to the ER, and it was like, Dad, emergency. You need to get here. Here's the address. I'm on my way to the hospital. I'll call you back. Everything's fine-ish, but
Yeah.
I got to make some other calls. It's, I don't have time to small talk, of course, and you could sense that and hear it in my voice. Then I called my best friend from eighth grade, who's a nurse he's a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital. He just changed his entire career. He's 43,
Hmm.
and over the last like 5-6 years, he became a nurse, right? So he's in the Children's Hospital system. So I'm calling him, trying to figure out where he's at. He's able eventually to show up and be the first person ever to hold Leonidas, ironically, and just be there to console me. So I was just trying to figure out, like, what's in my control.
Hmm.
Not a lot at that moment, but I kind of just I had to stay really present in all that madness.
Yeah.
And fortunately, it it all worked out and he's thriving. But
Yeah.
so there's a lot of lessons I still probably haven't even processed that are available. Um, and then some really, really apparent ones, like being present in the moment was our greatest contribution. And kind of the leadership role that Mac and I took was,
Hmm.
or that she even took, was like, um, through her voice and through the words she spoke to him. And that kind of inspired me. And we both just stayed as present as we could. The hardest thing in that moment, I had to leave her at the birth center.
Hmm.
I had to birth her placenta and then recoup basically for 4 or 5 hours. So there was the traumatic experience of her son not breathing and then kind of breathing, and the paramedics swooping us up. And then I had to say, he's going to be okay. I looked at her. I remember vividly looking at her and not knowing for sure if he was going to be
Hmm.
okay, but declaring it,
Hmm.
and rooting for it and pulling for it, aspiring for it, and like making it come possible with whatever ounce of control I had, even though I didn't control much, and then parting ways with her. So
Yeah.
pretty wild way to start things off.
And it's crazy. I think of this to myself all the time, like how quickly and how attached emotionally you are to them, and you've never met them. You've known about your child before birth for 8, 9 months, maybe. It always just it blows me away that like Beck is my favorite person in the world.
Mhm.
And it's like he can't even talk to me. He says "da" and points at things, or he goes "uh-oh" now. And that y'all's experience, I couldn't imagine being there and thinking you're going to lose your child, because like I said, Beck in every aspect has been very easy. We've been very fortunate. When he was born, he was fine. And I think ever having to think that I might lose him is I don't know. I don't know what I would do, because yeah, he's the best thing in the world. And it's just, like I said, it's just so crazy how you just fall in love with him so much. There's nothing, the love for your child, my love for my child, there's nothing can compare. I love my wife, but it's not the same kind of love as the way I love Beck, you know? And it's just he's the best thing ever. He's so great. And I always want to be there and be able to, kind of going back to what we're talking about. I love him. I don't want to force him into ever anything. I want him to guide him along on what he is passionate about and loves. Because I love seeing him be content and be excited about something. That's super fun. Yeah.
I love that you say he's your favorite person, but he can't even communicate with you.
No.
Or verbally.
No.
Yeah.
You can communicate, but yeah, not verbally.
Yeah, not with great clarity and concision, right? It's like,
Yeah.
gotta someone come interpret this little human for me.
Well, it's like, what is it that, like, I guess it's just the fatherly or the instinct's kicking in, like that you have to take care of this person. And that's where that connection comes from. Like, it's maybe a very primitive, primal connection. Like, I'm sure you feel it with Leonidas, like nobody better touch back. Like, I love the guy. He's amazing. I'd do anything for him.
Yeah. Two things come to mind. One, to acknowledge what you said earlier, where just moments ago, he was in M's belly for 9 months, 10 months,
Yeah.
and now here he is.
Yeah.
And you don't, as the father, I was excited to be a dad during
Yeah.
Mackenzie's pregnancy, but my connection to Leonidas while he was in the womb was not the same as her. She's actually feeling and growing this little dude, and it was more tangible for her. It's more tangible for the mamas, and it wasn't as tangible for me. So I was excited, but it was still almost theoretical more than it was real, even though it was definitely real.
Yeah,
And then,
no,
but so then I
I
feel
agree.
like as soon as that you actually meet him, despite the communication challenges, it's like instantly you fall in love.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we realized how much, do you think you realized how much your parents loved you until you loved Beck the way you love Beck?
My dad would say sometimes to me, he'd say, "You won't realize how much I love you until you have a child."
Yeah.
And now, yes, I realize their love for me,
Yeah.
because that's how I feel towards Beck.
Yeah.
And it's funny you saying the connection thing, before Beck was born, just like you, like, yes, there is a connection with what is going on in Emily's belly, which for video people, this is a photo
There,
of her right here hanging up on my wall with
yeah.
Beck. I took that. um, but now having gone through it, I think I feel more of a connection the second time around, because fatherhood was an idea the first time around with Beck. It was this yes, I will be there. Like, yeah, that is something, but I can't imagine it because I've never done it. I've never done fatherhood.
Yes.
But now with the second one, she seems more real to me when I get to feel her kick or see Emily's belly with her in there, because I'm like, oh, I've experienced fatherhood now for a scant 16 and a half months,
Mhm.
so it feels more real to me this time around, which is very interesting. And I don't know if anyone else who has more than one kid feels the same way. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting that now I actually feel like, oh, okay, I have this connection with her already in the belly.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was very conceptual, prior to Beck and prior to
Yeah.
Leonidas for us. And I still appreciated the magnitude of taking on the role, but I could only it was only concept. It was only, an idea.
Yes.
And just like many things in life, like you can conceive it in your mind and then you have to go actually experience it firsthand for it to make great sense and to actually um, to make meaning and relevance out of it. And here we are now in the thick of it. I feel
Yeah.
like within the first, there was a thought in my head when I was holding Leonidas's hand, lifeless, and he was the wrong color. He's laying there. They put him on this little board and set him between
Mhm.
his legs so they could move him around. They were thinking proactively. So he's sitting there, not moving. And
Mhm.
I'm like, definitely hoping, praying that he's going to pull it off, and like thinking, we were yelling like, fight, come on, man, you got this, let's go. Like we were speaking to him in like, you got to battle, like we were
Mhm.
but we didn't know for sure, right? But I remember thinking, whether he makes it or not, I was processing the whole thing going, wow, I will never take life for granted ever again. And I've definitely had that on my mind a decent amount, but I still, even though now it's past, I kind of, some days I'm probably still taking life for granted. But it just put it all into perspective in like a really quick moment, like, oh my
Yeah.
God, just this, the value of life, the gift that we have of life, I mean, it's truly, even for anybody in hardship or like in a unfavorable dynamic, it's like, it's still an amazing, um, lucky, fortunate thing to be, to exist. And there's this helpless little creature who's on the edge of existence. And oh man, lots of lots to say about it, I suppose, in another conversation.
Yeah.
But so as we're talking about this, I'm like thinking, what was it like to be Austin Liberato before Beck showed up? Maybe, 3 months out. What were you doing to prepare to be a father in two realms? The mental realm, what were you doing? And then
Yeah.
in the practical realm, around your house or with the way your schedule worked or whatever. So the practical realm and the mental realm, what kind of best practices would you suggest?
Well, practical. So that was a little bit easier, I think, to approach. We went from living in an 850 square foot two-bedroom apartment near downtown Denver to moving out to the suburbs of Denver area. Um, so practically looking for a bigger house, looking for something that we had actually had a yard. Um, and so yeah, I mean, let's see, about 6 months before he was born or so, we moved. Um, and so lifestyle changed a lot for us. Like I am very much like I think I'm gonna I think one of the big things was just like the commuting part. I used to love riding my bike around the city and getting to areas and that kind of thing. Don't do as much now here in this area, but love that we have a place for Beck, like for a home for him, where he has square footage to move around and like enjoy himself and get out. And then we have a big green space that our backyard opens up to. And so like when he gets older, just like be able to just like let him just go wild. So yeah, that says actually that part of it is, you know, just talking about and just moving. The mental part, I don't know, man. It's tough because like we said it before, like being a dad, like you're trying to prep for something that you've never done before. That like for me, I get that Emily has a baby. We're going to be having a child. But how do you mentally prepare for that as a dad? Like it's one of those things like, are you ever mentally prepared for it? Like once he's born, then I'm like, yes, here he is. And the responsibility, I think maybe prepping for the responsibility of having a child is the only thing that I could prep for because there's so many parts of it that you just don't know what to expect. Um, so you know, prepping and saying, you know what, I'm going to be a dad. This is what's going on, and I like to tell my friends that either have kids or don't. It's like once you have your child, like I feel like you just step up, going back to that primitive, primal, you know, human instinct. It's it's not tough, it's not easy, but it's in you to be able to do it, and that's why going back to that legendary thing. Anybody can be a legendary father. Just step up. And it's in your DNA to be able to do that and to step up. So preparation for me was just, I think, mentally prepping, I think, just to be a dad. There's nothing specific that, you know, I didn't have any things that I did. Emily tried to get me to read more baby books, but that was tough for, for me. First off, not being a huge reader. Secondly, I was just like, you know, parents did it thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, whenever I was born, and they figure it out, you know.
Did you get into anything that read? I mean, did you read a snippet out of at least something, or was it like just to give you a little bit of breathing room here? I'll tell you, I don't know what it was. There was like 10 books that came into our realm that would have been valuable to read supposedly, and I think I got into one particular book called Baby Wise that a friend of mine recommended. And I didn't read the whole thing either. So I don't know. Maybe that's the dad in us or the guy in us or like the
Yeah,
because Mac jumped into a lot of great stuff and she would share some things with me and you
I think
know
our wives are similar in that they're
yeah.
preppers. They are like, you know, Emily was going through books and reading them like crazy and then passing off the information to me. I am not a much of a
That's the caretaker in them. They're like that
yes, and two,
versus
I'm not a planner. You know, I tend to just let things roll and
yeah.
ride, and it works out, and I figure it out as it goes.
Hmm.
For me, and that's my personality. It's tight because like what I do is wedding photography. Yes, there is an overall schedule for the day, but you cannot plan what's going to happen on a wedding, what's actually going to happen.
Yeah.
So it plays on into my strength, and that's just my personality. Like I knew that millions of people have been fathers before us and that they figured it out without reading a book. And I knew that my wife was very much prepping for it. And it's just my style. Like reading a book on that was not my style of doing something. And also too, though, I will say this, communication between the two of us is very strong.
Hmm.
And Emily would read and we would talk about stuff, you know, and, you know, how we want to attack this nap schedule. That was the biggest thing, his nap schedule. And now Beck is an amazing sleeper. He has been ever since the 2 month mark. He's been great. The first night he slept 7 hours, like it went from like 2 hour stretches all of a sudden like 7 one night. We kept waking up because like, holy crap, is he dead? Like what the hell?
Yeah.
And then the first time that he went from his back and rolled onto his stomach. Emily was out of town. It was just me, and he wanted to be on his stomach. And I kept going, and I was watching our camera, and I look, and he's just face down, I'm like, oh, he's gonna die. He's gonna suffocate. I'd go in there, take his head, turn it to the side like this. I'd get back into our room, turn on our little Nanit camera, look again, just face down again, just into it. Did that like 7 times.
Yeah.
I was just like, you know what? And the books that Emily's read and what I've kind of just like sneakily, looked up online or so, like once they can roll over, and I could be chopping this up because it's been a number of months since he does. Once they can roll over, like he's fine. So I just let it ride, and he was fine the next morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be something worth highlighting for any newer dad listening, or even I have a couple buddies who I've encountered recently who are about to be dads.
Yeah.
And I realized whether it's the things that are written about, or even the hospital system, the actual birth experience, the entities involved in birth are hyper aware of worst case scenario risks and liabilities and the extreme scenarios. And
Mm-hmm.
there's all these rules and protocols that are well intended and probably to a degree prudent and good, but you can get bogged down in them. And we actually in the hospital system, we found ourselves running up against not so much the nurse level practitioners or the
Mm-hmm.
the nurse level professionals, but more the nurse practitioners and then
Mm-hmm.
the actual doctors. And we ran into friction with them with their information. So they're like a book of information, and they're telling you how to do things or how it needs to be done. And then after the fact, dissecting it was like, well, the reason they'd have that perspective, or perhaps a book or a resource tells you a certain thing, is because they're
Mm-hmm.
managing liability and risk in everything they do.
Yeah.
And that can actually I think it can confuse or overwhelm us as like just an average human being having a kid. It's good to be aware of them, but to hyper focus on the extreme things, like, is he not going to be able to roll over? Is he going to suffocate himself? Like,
Yeah.
no, he's he's got it in him to sort it out, and he's got the strength, the awareness, the innate awareness as a human being. Um, so I don't know. I'm curious what your reaction to that is, and I wonder what other people would say. Like, are we doing more harm than good with all these protocols and procedures and uh, but there's an industry behind this too, of course. So there's money to be made
Yeah.
and attention to spend.
I mean, I don't think I can really dive into it because I'm by no means expert, but I can say like after having just one child, like they're resilient, man. Like those little guys, they're so resilient, Leonidas, he's a fighter. Beck, Beck is just like he's right now he hits his head on everything. He's in that toddler phase of walking around, just slams into the floor, hits the side of the desk, and it's like he's upset for a second, and then literally 60 seconds later, he's back at it again, doing the same thing, you know. So yeah, I think that there is sometimes a hyper awareness of taking care and coddling your child or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, just using some sense, I won't call it common sense, just sense. And like with him rolling over, he could roll over by himself now. Whenever that first night that he was sleeping face down, obviously he could turn his head because he was turning and going straight down, and then I would turn his head for him, and then he'd turn it straight back down and breathe into the mattress again. After literally like the seventh time, I was like, you know what? I think he's fine. I think he's going to be okay. There's no point in worrying because obviously he's turning his head and he wants to be sleeping like that. Yeah, it's just they're just resilient, and there's a ton of information out there. Different books say different things about schedules, you know. Because and I keep going back to the sleep schedule because that was a huge thing when Beck was younger for us, was getting a sleep schedule. And now, dude, since he was 6 months old, I think getting back in that gray fog of the first few months, whatever. I think it's since about 6 months old, dude's been sleeping 12 hours. Hard. Loves his 12 hours, man. Loves it. Yeah. Great sleeper.
Because you cannot wait for that. Me neither, but our dynamic, she's been breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Early on, we were bottle feeding. I shared the burden quite a bit. Now
Yeah.
it is right now landing on Mac quite a bit.
Yeah, it is whenever you breastfeed.
Yeah, and then we do have two different rooms, so sometimes we're in the same bedroom, and sometimes not. So every
How
now and then, often
how
I'll
old
get.
is Leonidas now?
Let's see, he was 10-1. I don't have his 10-1 was his birthday, and today
So
is
3.5 months-ish.
3.5 months. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah. Oh, still in the thick of it, man.
still in the thick of it, and his habits and his patterns are changing quite a bit
Yeah.
right now. Where and this happens seriously since we got back from the NICU 11 days
Mhm.
out on the 11th of October,
Mhm.
and so that was a massive disruption to whatever supposed pattern he would have had at that point, or rhythm.
Mhm.
So we had to really calibrate and get to know each other and understand, what he needed and how it was going to go. Plus, he was on oxygen with a cannula
Yeah.
for, which means, just picture, and this, but just for anyone listening, he's got the cannula up his nostrils, two little plastic tubes that then connect to some other tubing that eventually connects to an oxygen tank. And so we had to refill that oxygen tank. We had multiple oxygen tanks and an in-house filler, and you just pull, out of the air oxygen and compress it into the tank. That was amazing to have. Yet, and we're thankful we're in this day and age with that technology, but it was definitely a burden. It felt like an inconvenience, and all we wanted to do was snuggle him and
Yeah.
be with. Um, that's kind of a side note, I suppose, just a little context. But so even that though was trying for him, and getting him to sleep with his cannula in 24/7. He had oxygen in, right?
Mhm.
And then his putting him down for naps, like all of that, plus the oxygen. And then eventually he did start sleeping a little bit different or having different eating habits, and Mac working on uh, her lactation abilities and the demand.
Mhm.
It's fascinating that the baby literally through, I would imagine, sounds and touch and pheromones or something like that, the baby communicates with the mom's body, and the mom's body can react and produce more milk. And the more consistent the baby's eating, that sends signals to the mom and her production levels. It's like getting all that calibrated, watching that, and trying
Mhm.
to support that and just be there for that. That was hard. So he's gone through shifts of sleep and eating that
Mhm.
any baby would go through, plus some of the unique ones we've experienced. And I don't think I don't know, it's any given day could be a new change up still. And we're yearning for a long, a long night's rest.
It's
We really
it's
are.
it's crazy how much it affects you.
Yeah.
You know, even just getting just consistently, let's just say in a row, 6 hours versus 8 hours, just that difference is
Mhm.
over, a month's time. It's just such a big difference. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
That's been, if Mac really needs something from me, out of all the things she needs, she definitely needs ongoing support and just being a great partner in
mhm.
a lot of different capacities. But sometimes it's just like, can I get 20 minutes? I'm gonna go take a nap. I'm like, oh yeah, of course. And she's just squeezing in a nap here and there because it's invaluable. Sleep is invaluable, yet it's the most scarce thing in the early days.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Well,
I don't know. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I have an insane respect for single parents with young kids.
Oh, right.
After doing this with a partner and having each other to rely on, like, it's mostly single mothers, let's say, and raising a child on their own, like, dude, they are just
Yeah.
superheroes. Like, what they go through by themselves as a single parent raising a child, just it blows my mind. And I have a lot of respect for those people because we have a hard enough time and there's two of us, and we even have help. in there. So yeah, it just reminded me when you were just talking about sleep and just being able to pass, Leonidas off for 20 minutes. And then Beck does 2 to 3 hour, depends, 2 to 3 hour naps now, just one nap in the middle of the day. And that time is so funny. It's like, I can't wait to put him down because I'm like, oh man, I get 2 or 3 hours just by myself to go do something. But then at the same time, I'm like, damn, I miss him. When's he going to wake up? Come on, man. Where are you? Wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose for the dads listening, maybe to summarize that last bit of our conversation, it's like there are tons of resources out there. You could school yourself up on all the different theories and best practices. Maybe just one of the two of you can do that and distill it down for each other, kind of how Em did for you, and even how Mac did for me, frankly. But then again, even if you don't read anything, we have this innate sense about ourselves to sort out what they really need when they ultimately really need it, not 2 months in advance in theory. And we tussled with this, Mac and I, where it was like, all right, we have a bassinet upstairs, and then do we want another bassinet down here, or do we? And we were trying to make these determinations of our setup and our rhythms before we actually had him. And part of our conversation we would conclude certain things, and we would actually say, yeah, let's get that, or let's put that here, or whatever. And then not maybe at a certain point, but within that, we also let go of certain things and just said, well, I don't know. It's gonna work itself out. And now literally like the little play area that he has for tummy time and how that's set up, and it all worked itself out. And we almost just let reality show up in any given day to reveal what he needed or what we needed to do to design a new lifestyle or a new daily rhythm. And that's the go with the flow aspect that you touched on, that I feel like I'm going to go with the flow, and I will respond thoughtfully. And I know that whatever we need to do to set him up for success, we have the resources or the resourcefulness to do it. And let's just wait and see what the moment really needs, or what he really needs, or what the dynamic really needs. So yes, there's a ton of resources out there. You could try to plan the perfect experience for your kiddo, but then there's also the opposite, which is just go with the flow.
Well, I think that at the end of the day, there's so many books, there's so many friends that give you advice, but as parents, you know what's best for your child. For us, for Beck, first off, like he only wanted the bottle. That's all he wanted. So it was breast milk and formula, because then Emily also wasn't producing enough for him. And it's like, you hear the adage of like breast is best. Like Beck did not want to do it. He loved the bottle. That was it. There was nothing we could do about it. We could not convince him to do anything else. And then also too, for us, Beck was out of his bassinet and in his bed after like 2 weeks in another room, because Emily and I are both light sleepers, especially Emily. And we were not getting any sleep because he was making so many noises throughout the night and everything. And finally one morning we said, you know what? Let's just, usually what I think is like 6 weeks or even more in the bassinet or whatever. And we're just like, you know what? We can't have him in the room. We're on top of not getting sleep from having to feed him all the time. We're not sleeping because then he's asleep. He's making noises, he's crying, he's making all these little things. We have our little Nana camera. We have it going on our phone so we can hear it, So if there's any issues, we can check on him. But we put him into his room at, I think it was like 2 weeks, and it was so nice. And he's also became accustomed to his room. And to this day, like he loves, and we've got so lucky, he loves his crib. And after a bath, he runs into his bedroom, we play for a little bit, and then he starts reaching for his crib. And I'll put him in there, and he starts just playing in his crib and everything, and he loves it. And then whenever we get him ready, we do his little bedtime routine. And then when we put him in there, he just passes out. And so, because we were scared that if we let him go and play in his bed, because he loves just getting in it, that it might kind of change his mindset of what the bed is. But for him, no, he will play in it. We'll put him. He'll be in there for 30 minutes or so before bed. Take him out, do his little bedtime routine of his water or his milk. I don't know because Emily does that now. That's her part. I do the bath beforehand. Um, his books, and then in his little sleep sack, and then as soon as you put him down, we'll walk downstairs, and he's just like this, just out, you know. So
It,
yeah, I mean,
is it fair to say it took a little experimentation to get that
for
sorted out?
sure.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that I would suspect, I mean, we're doing it a lot differently right now. Like Mac is doing some co-sleeping, which some people think is totally against the rules, but
Yeah.
uh, it works really well for her and him. And we're experimenting too. We're trying to sort out. We want to get to that point, but I just feel like there's multiple paths, right? And each kid's going to be a little bit different. And you also, you think about the actual space you're in. Some people are in different living situations, and
Hmm.
there's all these little different factors. So treat it like an experiment and an iterative process. And um, we, as parents, feel like we are part of our duty is to be the observer, the grand observer, and not react to everything. It's easy to get uptight or anxious or worried, and
Hmm.
to kind of take a breath and be the observer of the moment and guide people. I liked how you said guide earlier. You want to
Yeah.
guide back to a good spot. So I want to make sure I touch on some things before our time wraps up. But the theme that comes to mind that I think would benefit me and really any newer dad, upcoming dad, is the role of fatherhood is one thing, but the role of being a great partner to your wife. And how did that? What was that experience? Maybe the challenges, the challenging part, and the ways that you stepped up or showed up before birth and then after birth. What was your experience like? And being there for your partner, it's one thing to be a great dad. Within the context of being a great dad is also supporting M and me supporting Mac. And I'll share some of my experience as well. It's different than it is for me at least. It's different than our relationship without a kid, of course, with
Oh
before
yeah.
the magnitude of taking on the ultimate role and raising legends. So what was your experience before birth, but during pregnancy and after birth, in terms of how you supported him?
Wow. I think the biggest thing is communicating. Um, beforehand, like Emily has sleep issues. And then the further along she got into pregnancy, and we're getting into this point right now too. Like we're just at the beginning stages of it. Sleep is a tough thing for her, and getting sleep for her is important when you're, you know, making a baby, creating a baby inside. So being there, like she has restless leg syndrome. So sitting there, and like it was so important. If she was gonna be able to sleep with whenever she was having, when she was pregnant with Beck, sitting there and massaging her legs before she went to bed, because otherwise she'd be up all night with restless leg. Um, and again, going in the overall arching thing is it's just communication. Her letting me know, like, hey, I'm not sleeping very well. Can you help me with this part? You know, and then the after part now is just communication on, like, how do we want to raise Beck?
Hmm.
What are things that we value with him? That we want to make sure that we instill in him. I think you know, that's in support of each other for that part. And supporting her now. I mean, now we're back into the pre again. So supporting her and just all the daily stuff that pregnancy makes life tough with. It's not
Mhm.
easy to move around. It's not easy to pick things up, to bend over, to tie her shoes. Just helping her with all that stuff, to make it less stressful. I think that's for us. That's kind of where we're at, with him, and with Beck and support for her and that kind of stuff. just helping with each other with the the direction that we want to take him, supporting each other and how we interact with him. I think we have a great relationship with that. We have two different styles. I'm sure you do as well. Like I'm much more like the dad and the stoic maybe, and Emily's much more like, oh my God, come over here, give me kisses, that kind of thing, and spoils them like crazy, lets them do whatever. And then I'm more the disciplinary, So it's fun to see that. It's fun to see how we attack those two different roles as parents for him and supporting each other in those roles.
I like that you note that communication's at the heart for sure of, understanding what M ultimately needs right now during pregnancy, and same for Beck was in the mix in the womb.
Yep.
And being of service to your wife, and on behalf of a good outcome with the kiddo. Like I know what the outcome is. I want a healthy, happy baby, or content. Content. But what are the methods to do that? And I love that, one thing that was going to get in the way was restless leg syndrome. So you're gonna have it's not like everybody needs to rub their wife's feet. I'm sure they would love that. But
no, and it's not like I went in there, I was like, oh babe, what can I do? It's like, sometimes like I really am tired. I need to go to bed, that kind of thing. So it's not perfect.
No doubt. But you guys noted that as like a truly a tactic, like, well, this is one thing that's going to get in the way. What can you do? And then even afterwards, I feel like the reality for the men's role or the man's role, yes, we've gone through this experience with our wives, but it's nothing like what our wives have gone through. And the biology, their bodies are changing. Literally the chemicals running through their system and hormones are changing, and then perhaps in disarray for a while. And they're reconciling that. And I can see this with Mac. Like Mac is there. There's Mackenzie, and then there's a version of her experiencing all this stuff she doesn't even know how to comprehend necessarily. She's just going through it, and she can get swept up by it, and being flexible with that has been a challenge. Sometimes I'm like, what's going on right now? Right. And I don't, and reminding myself the transformation that Mackenzie has gone through is probably the most notable transformation, that she'll ever go through or that I'll ever witness. And it was such a transformation that beforehand it was however it was, and afterwards there's a new human being involved, right? So that transformation is significant, and I'm trying to learn what that really means for Mac. Did you and M talk about, like, afterwards, her, the emotional side of being a mama and the physical side of being a mama and the mental side of being a mama, and what that means for what she needed from you? Or was it apparent, or how did you reconcile?
We didn't have like an exact sit down conversation about it. I think in passing, and when we talk about this stuff and talk about Beck, yes, there are things she's like, I need this from you. I need your help with this. This is, me. Also too, though, I was just thinking this when you're talking about this. I'd be curious, because I think you're still in it, but I feel like, and the friends I've talked to, there's this like, you black out a lot of right after birth type thing. The first few months, I did not remember a lot of stuff. And when my friends were telling me this, like, oh, I don't really remember when he started sleeping or she started sleeping, or, we were talking about this the other day. Like, did we start actually sleep training Beck when he was really young? And we're both sitting there like, I don't know. Or was he just a good sleeper and he started sleeping and we cannot figure it out? So there's all these things with, like, you're talking about, support immediately after his birth. I blacked a lot of it out. Man, I don't know. And maybe now it's also too so ingrained in us that we don't think about it. It's really strange. I'd be really curious your experience here in a few months, like I think like 6-8 months out, to see like how much of this do you remember of the beginning stages and sleepless nights. Because I can think of like, I can remember exactly 2 sleepless nights. The first two of having him home, I woke up at noon and then 11, and usually I'm like a 6 a.m. waker, you know, and just being like, holy crap, how are we gonna do this? But yeah, a lot of that stuff, I feel like these conversations about communication, that kind of stuff, now feel so just ingrained, or maybe we did talk about it. I just don't remember some of it.
Man, that's funny because it feels like making sense of your experience in the moment is going to be tough for everybody when life is coming at you from a number of different angles at a variety of speeds all of a sudden completely differently than it was before, right?
Yeah.
And to make sense of things at that point, and you only have so much processing power, in the executive function of our brain you're actually maybe in the moment you could articulate um, how you were handling sleep for him, or the
Mm-hmm.
process. But 6 months down the road, you're like, I got other things to tend to with my attention and energy, so it no longer needs to be up here. So we're shifting it out of our heads.
Yeah.
uh, but whether it was on purpose or it worked itself out, you guys you're in a great place now. So I'm glad that he's got an amazing rhythm. And I'm still,
We
what would you say, just kind of tidying things up with
Mhm.
what is the current biggest challenge with where Beck's at and being a dad for you?
Getting into the phase where he is now interacting with other kids, because he has been, stay-at-home nanny with a stay-at-home nanny over at her parents' house. So now at 16 and a half months, he is now starting to go in daycare and be out of the house. So that new thing of like, we're expecting such big changes with him. He's still having a hard time going in and he freaks out. But then once he's there, like the people are taking care of him. They're just like, yeah, he's fine. He's a little quiet, but he's fine there. So that our biggest challenge is just like, I would just maybe sum it up as just like us letting go and him being away from us, and for him that socialization and being away from us. So that separation is the biggest thing for him right now.
That's going to be a learning experience, right? Just to be able to, gosh, as a 16-month-old, it's funny to think about our little kiddos. Like right now, one day of Leonidas's life is 140th, whatever the number would be,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so for him to go into these experiences, he only has 16 months of experience of knowledge and insights to figure out what's going on. So to make sense of being left in this new environment is, inherent in us is this defense mode, or this like safety mechanism to be on the lookout and be skeptical and all that. Um, and yet eventually uh, he'll be familiar with the rhythm, and he'll consider it like, oh, this is how it is, and I can step into it versus hesitate from it. So
Yeah, I'm really curious as to what goes through his mind when we do leave him.
yeah.
I think it's just this attachment. I don't think he feels like he's being left. I think he just feels so attached to us. That's why he freaks out. He's like, well, I don't really like any of these people. I have no connection. And my only connection in the world is you two. And you're walking away and I have to be with these people all day, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we're excited for him to be able to socialize, be with other kids, and just get that whole socialization and being around in unfamiliar areas right now.
Did you
Uh,
and him talk through what did you come to, if you're leaning on communication quite a bit between each other,
mhm.
acknowledging this is going to be hard for him? What do we do to support him? How did you handle, or how did you approach this new dynamic?
I mean, we're still trying to learn.
Yeah.
We're still trying to figure it out. We don't know, because it's new to both of us. We talk about it. We talk about like his first day of daycare. Like she couldn't even be there to drop him off. I had to go do it by myself because she was just so torn up about it.
Mhm.
Um, and I dropped him off and just watched him, and it's crazy because he feels like he's a toddler. We look at him now these days and we're like, he's a little boy. Like he is become a little boy, and he was an infant. And it's just so crazy how quickly they grow up. Like every single day, I'm sure with Leonidas, like it's a new thing that he's learning to do or realizing, like from the small things of being able to hold his head up to then being able to sit up to then eating your normal food with you to then solids with you that you eat. Like it's so fun just to be able to throw down some food that we're eating, and he's just sitting there just eating it up with us. And he looks at me, and like I make a little breakfast burrito in the morning, but I can just give him eggs, and he wants to bite him a burrito. So now I make him a little burrito himself that he gets himself.
Oh, that's
It's
so
just
cute.
the daily things. And so we're just in a fate. Huh?
I was gonna say I catch myself yearning for and I acknowledge, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. I should be present in these little moments, but I can't wait for when he can interact with me more consciously, either through communication or even just like conscious hug, or telling me, just communicating what he wants. And those little steps that I get to look forward to, I almost want to fast forward to them, but yeah, that's not the way to approach it. But I look forward to those levels of new interaction as fast as they're going to come and go.
It's fun. It's not, I think it's not that like you're appreciative in the moments that you're in, but you look forward to it. It's like a vacation type thing. Like you look forward to a vacation. You look forward to whenever they get older and the next little step, because you don't know what it is. You don't know what that next little step is. Because it's so exciting. Like when he started walking, it's so fun. And now he's just like a madman. Like he walks around with his arms like this up, and runs around, and seeing the pattern and how from walking he doesn't look like a baby anymore, because he's walking so much and burning so many calories. He's losing all that fat, so now he's turning into a little boy. And this happened within the last like 2 to 3 months. 2 months probably. A little bit of a late walker.
Yeah.
3 months maybe. Yeah, 3. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Super fun.
All right, Austin, last question.
All right.
I want to hear from you. What do you want to be known for? Imagine Beck and your kiddos are 65 and they're reflecting with their friends or their family. What do you want to be known for in your role as a father?
Just that I was there for them, that I was supportive. I don't think there's a lot more that's necessarily required of you as a parent, that when they look back at me, they just go, you know what? Like, Dad was there for me. Dad supported me in everything I did. Like, I feel like sometimes kids can hold a resentment because either they push their kids too hard, or maybe the vice versa was never there for them. So being supportive of both of them, potentially all three. We'll see if there's a third coming. I don't know, at some point. That's a debate. Yeah, that's what I want, because I think that's what I appreciated about my parents, being there for me, supportive in what I did. Maybe they didn't love everything that I did. My parents definitely didn't love that I was by myself on the other side of the world backpacking for a year. My mom was freaking out, but they were supportive of it.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, to grow up as a father and have our kids think like my dad was my biggest fan. He had my back at everything. That's huge, man. Well said.
If Beck says that and thinks that, then I think I succeeded.
Beautiful. All right, Austin. Appreciate your time, dude. And thanks for being a guest on Whoa Dad, Go Dad. I'll see you next time, man.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
It is.
See ya.
There you have it. That's been another episode of Whoa Dad, Go Dad. If you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast so you get the future ones, and please spread the word and post this episode to your social networks. That's powerful. Perhaps the best thing you can do is share this directly with a new dad or a soon-to-be dad that you know personally. Let them know you're rooting them on. And indeed, drop a comment and be really a part of this dialogue on fatherhood with me. Let me know in the comments a question you want me to ask other dads, or just some feedback. How does this sound to you? What's helpful? What stands out about these conversations? I would appreciate that. until as I grow, Whoa Dad, Go Dad. I've got many more episodes to come, and I'm so glad you're here. Looking forward to catching you on the next one.
Whoa, Dad, go Dad, here we go now. Oh yeah, the ultimate roll now.